Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining another ARD Community Webcast. Today, our topic is the new release for ARD, version 2.6. We have Josh Taylor on the phone today. He's the product owner for ARD, and he's going to be going through a presentation and a very quick demo on the new release, and we'll also be taking questions. If you have any questions as we're going through today's session, you can feel free to enter them into the Q&A box that's at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can type your questions in there, and then we'll get to them at the end of today's session. Okay, I'm going to turn the call over to Josh now. Take it away, Josh.
Thank you, Melanie. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And with that, let's get started. So ARD 2.6. So this is already live. So if you guys haven't tried this one, I encourage you to go to the download site, download it, and give it a go. A lot of good stuff in here. And the couple of items actually I want to touch on today. So I've picked 7 kind of main items, but there's lots of little things in this release I think you'll really like too. So we have some things with TDM, we have some nice usability improvements, which we're always lovely to see, and then we kind of get into the core of ARD's functionality, looking at some automation items, some new integrations, and some improvements to existing integrations. So on that item, let's jump into TDM's integration improvements. And for those of you who use TDM, so those of you who don't actually, it's probably better I describe that one. So ARD can connect to TDM for a variety of reasons. And the most beneficial reason is to return data to be used within ARD. So you can drive your test cases with very complex data coming from the TDM world. You can get very, very sophisticated with this. And you can actually have ARD to parameterize publishers. So you can tell TDM to go and make you some very complex data. ARD can trigger that process and return the results. So we've made a small change to this where when you're setting up these publishers in TDM, previously you've got to kind of go into the TDM world, set this entire system up, and then come into ARD. And that's still true today. The one change we've made is beforehand, if ARD wanted to view a particular item from the publish, for example, if you told TDM to go and create you a list of customers and you wanted the customer name to come back to ARD, you would have to go into TDM to make that so. You have to go into TDM and say, I would like the customer name back always. But now that actual small piece of functionality is available directly in ARD. So you can see this in the screenshot. So when you edit these publishers, you can tag that column which says store column, and that way TDM knows to return the column to ARD to be used later. Just really tying in that really tight connection between these really two great products. So with ARD and TDM, you not only get good test cases, but great test data as well. Another very small, quite important actually change is our file exporter. So today ARD has many integrations with many popular pieces of software, and they all work very well. But the backbone of this is that if for any reason you would need data in a particular kind of format or particular kind of layout, then we fall back to export to Excel. And the great thing is with ARD's Excel export is that it's completely customizable. So what we allow the user to do is come into ARD, select to export a set of test cases, and then we ask the user to define a template of what those test cases should look like. So this has existed for quite a long time, and the templates are created in Excel, and the user can actually specify the template from scratch to be exactly how they want it to be, and we're just expanding the amount of information that that template can use. So starting now, you can actually define to not only use the fields built into ARD, so fields like test case name, test description, test status, but now you've got access to custom fields. So within ARD, if you need a specific field for any reason that ARD doesn't currently have, for example, if there's a field for color, you could define that as a custom field. And now with this exporter, you can actually reference that custom field. So every time when you export your test cases, you can export a lot more information about that one test case because you can now tap into custom fields. And when you're exporting from ARD, you can export many different kinds of items. You can export the flow as a single item. So we can attack custom fields on that level. If you're exporting test cases, we get stored path custom fields. Or if you're exporting blocks from the flow, we also have block custom fields. So every type of custom field which we support today is now exposed to this file exporter. And like I said, the file exporter, most of the tools can import from some kind of version of Excel. So by ARD expanding this functionality, we're really building a strong foundation for ARD to export data in the way you need it to look like. Like I said, the small usability improvements, which I'm always a big fan of personally, using a tool day in, day out, even the slightest of change really makes a big, big difference. And a couple of these items are my personal favorites we've implemented for a while. So the first item is when you're creating blocks. So previously you've had to use the tool doc we have built into ARD. You had to select, I would like a process block, and you've got to drag the process block into the canvas and have it been created. But now, if you just hover over a block, you get predefined blocks at the side of it. So you can see with this screenshot, if, for example, I have a process block, I can hover over it and then very, very quickly make another process block. And this auto connects them. And what this really means is as I'm building a flow, it becomes a lot quicker, a lot smoother. And I can focus exactly the part of the model I would like to add information to, rather than move away to the tool doc, bring in a new item and drop it exactly where I want it. Now I can just drag from the item I want to connect it to. This makes it a lot easier to make flows. We also have more control now, so if you have lots of flows open, you can right-click these tabs, and you get kind of the standard menu you'd expect. You can close all the flows which are open. You can close the ones to the left, the right, or you can save particular ones, just giving you a lot more control, especially when you have a lot of workload open at any given time. And another really good one, like I said, if you're using this day in, day out, it's really important where beforehand, every time you click the flow on your computer, anywhere in the computer, it would open up a brand new version of ARD. So you'd have more than one version of ARD live at any given time. So we've changed that to be that it actually opens up in the single version you have open. So rather than having multiple ARDs, you have the single. And now ARD is smart enough to realize, hey, there's one already open, great, use that one. Like I said, usability is kind of really key and core to day in, day out use. So any kind of improvement here is always massive for us. I'm really excited about those. A very big feature of ARD, and I think one of the reasons why I see the most value in this tool is the automation feature. So for those who are unfamiliar with the automation feature, we can actually specify not only models inside ARD, but we can actually overlay those models with automation code. So the beautiful thing with this is that I can have an unambiguous model describing my system. I can have that model give me test cases out, and I can also have those test cases to be automated. So that's a really powerful tool, and we strive to make this feature better and better. And a couple of nice key items we've got here is now we have this idea where a single automation step can contain another automation step. So you can have this embedded idea. You can put steps within steps. And we've also put some predefined configuration settings in for this feature too. So actually, if I show you the tool itself, so you can see exactly how this feature looks. So I have an ARD flow here, and this is just describing a website. And so for example, I've got a stage in this model where I load the home page of this website. So if I just take a look at that, and I have some automation code already assigned to this, which is great. But what this embedding feature means is that if I go to edit this automation step, the step is made up of two parts. It's the actual step itself, and then a parameter of the step, which means obviously I can reuse this step in multiple different ways and just pass in a value. So for this automation script, the command driver.get can be used as a variety of different web pages. I just pass in the web page I need to work with. Now, usually you just select a variable inside ARD. You say, okay, I would like the driver to get the home page address, but for any reason you want to make this logic a lot more complicated, you can say, okay, don't use just a simple variable. Say, I would like to use another object, and then ARD will actually ask you which object you care about. So, you know, if I care about, for example, an element, okay, let's do by CSS, and I'm just going to pick two random ones actually. So let's just do car type and country. And now, the next time this automation step gets rendered, it's firstly going to render this object here and say, okay, search for this element by CSS, generate that new page address, and then pass it in to make this step. So with the ability of embedding automation steps within automation steps, that makes us a more powerful language. And you can do a lot more clever things. And really, what I really like about this is it gives you more flexibility. So as I'm creating my flows and I'm creating my automation, any extra features it can give me, you know, to do more things is so useful. So yeah, I don't have to now, you know, redesign my flow by putting extra blocks in beforehand to make sure I do this step before I get to this step. It all gets handled inside a single step. It's really, really useful. Same kind of impact we had when we put subflows within subflows. Same kind of idea. The reusability becomes so powerful. The other items of the automation we have, so if I come into my automation configuration, now say for example I'm exporting my automation scripts. Every time when I export them, ARD is going to ask you a couple of simple questions. Where's the automation going to go? How do you want them exported? And what do you want exported? So because people tend to export things quite a lot, any way we can speed up that process is going to be a massive gain. So there's a small tweak which I really like actually. So if I go to and look at my layers, so I've got two automation layers. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with this feature, for example, if I'm exporting test cases, you know, and one I need a test case to be executed with Selenium, I need a test case executed by Ranorex. I can have a layer for each, so I can export two different kinds of automation for the same test case. And for this first layer, the default layer, so if I look at the configuration for this, it says, okay, when I export this, for every test case which ARD creates, I want a separate script. I want a separate file, and I'm going to execute that file later on its own. Perfect. But what I can also do is say, now for the layer alternative automation, I actually want that to be a merge script. And again, we have, you know, configurations for the name of the actual file, for the prefix of the file, if we can have an extension on it. And when I come in to export the automation later on, and if I just do that right now, so my alternative script for all these test cases is being sold as a merge script when I export, and my other layer, my default layer, is being handled as a separate script. So like I said, any kind of process where ARD is a little bit smarter about the context and how you're using it, always a massive gain. So really, really useful there. Another item which I'm particularly fond of is the idea of so look at this. Just trying to find this. Let me just grab. Automation compound, just an action. There we go. So now I can actually define join actions between automation steps. So a very good idea of this is, for example, every line in my automation, I would like to see a space. Every time, there's an individual action being executed, I would like a bit of white space between the items, just to make sure when I'm visually looking at them, I can see the separation. Now you can do that, and you can define before every automation step, you can insert another step, and after every automation step, you can insert something as well. So using this, again, like I said, you can kind of format the way ARD exports this information to any way which you like. And again, any more flexibility is always best. So with that item, I'm actually going to just quickly bring you back to my PowerPoint. So there are automation improvements. Moving on, we have a new integration with CA Application Test. And for those who are unfamiliar with Application Test, it's a test execution engine. And you can actually model a test case within this tool itself. This tool has a lot of power and has a lot of different ways you can execute individual automatic steps. And the functionality is so rich with that AppTest. It's a really impressive tool. And the place we're trying to help with customers of AppTest is in the area of data-driven testing. So in an example of, I've created a CA application test, and it's testing my website, and it's hitting the front end of my website, and then it's going into my database and then checking that, all the information I put in the front end is actually being stored in the back end. So to drive this test a lot of different ways, we brought ARD in. So by having ARD, we can create a model in ARD which can represent the data model. So I can model every data combination possible for this one test case. And then using this new integration, I can bring in that app test into ARD and have ARD pump this test full of data and export it so you can execute it a lot of different ways. So if I show you how to do that as well, because that's quite interesting. Great. I'm just going to use a simple example, actually. So say I've got a test case, and this test case is very basic, but it's within application test, and it's firing at an API endpoint. And in this test case, I'm just firing up this API, I'm giving it a company identifier, and then I'm getting a stock price back. So obviously, that test case can be run, infinite many ways with infinite bits of data, because it's executing the same test case, it's just being data-driven. So I already have my app test, and what I'm going to do is export all these possible data combinations from ARD, and the data combinations I can see in the test data screen. So I can see I've got two test cases. Each test has a name. Each test has a different company identifier. They've got the same endpoint, the same URL. But what I really care about for my test case is driving them with the company identifiers. And if I just come into Path Explorer, I just have to view my test cases. And then if I hit export, obviously I get asked where I'd like to export them to. And it's going to be application test. And the very first step in this process is, please give us an existing test case. So we're going to browse. There we go. So there's my get stock test case. I bring that in. I get asked what, if I want to remove any test cases. And then I come through and I get shown all my data combinations in the screen. And then I get listed all the variables which ARD found within that application test. So I can see there's only one variable inside the application test, and it's called company. So ARD is said, okay, if we have this variable inside AppTest and we have this variable inside ARD, let's match them up. So I can actually change this variable if I want. So for example, I want the company name to be my test name. What I'm going to get is this one application test file is going to be filled with the data for test 1 and the data for test 2. In this exact way, I really care about the company, but it's customizable enough that the user can choose where ARD injects this information. And nice and easy step. Just tell us where to export this test case to. I'm just going to export it to the same place. And then I get a review saying we're reading this one test in, and we're going to create 2 files. And in each of those files, we're going to replace one of the variables. I'm just going to click Next, and it tells me my files were created successfully. And on that note, I'm just going to drag in my file browser. So there's my original test called getStock, and ARD has now created 2 brand new app tests, exactly the same test case, but brand new files, and each one of those files has the data that we were looking at in that test data screen. So with this combination of AppTest being an amazing execution engine, and ARD being having the power of our optimizer and the modeling capabilities to model data combinations, you can really achieve high-quality data-driven testing. So really, really amazing feature of this one. And I'm just going to bring you back to my PowerPoint again and talk about another integration. This integration is with Taurus. And for those of you who don't actually know Taurus, Taurus again is another execution engine. I can't remember the URL actually. I think it's get Taurus, where you can download this and try it for yourself. Yeah, if I just share my screen again, I'll just show you the website for this. Just another execution engine, really. And the great thing is with Taurus is that it's a web-based technology, and you can install it locally, or you can use online Taurus service. You can really spin up lots of environments, and you can execute massive amount of scripts very, very easily. But it's free to get started, so you can pop to gettaurus.org, and you can download this and try it for yourself. But the value for ARD is that if ARD is creating scripts for Taurus to execute, ARD can now configure how those scripts are being executed. So if I go to if I go back to my earlier flow, and I come to export some automation, so I'll take these 5 test cases, I'll say I'll send them to automation, and the way in which Taurus works actually is you specify the scripts themselves. So here is my script I'd like to execute. The way it's configured is that they have a wrapper, and the wrapper is written in YAML, and there's just a couple of configuration settings that Taurus needs to get going. And to generate that wrapper, when you're exporting the automation ARD, just come to the advanced settings, hit the wrapper, select Taurus, and then export the scripts. So if I just wait for those to be, oh, there you go. This is an extra bit of configuration, so I can see that my YAML file is being pieced together. So I'm going to say the executor is I'm not going to use a cloud location. I just want one executed, just once as well. Great. Press OK. That's fine. And yep. Separate scripts, Taurus. Put that there. Oh, I think it's the location. Actually, let me change this. There we go. There we go. So I've got my 5 test cases, so they're ready to be run. Great. So I can run them individually if I like. But if I want to use the power of Taurus, this YAML file is now automatically being created for me. So we just take a look at that. And it's just describing, how they're going to be executed, what to execute, and how to execute. So each item of one of these test cases, you could stitch this file together manually, but it would be quite tedious. and having ARD do this one-click solution for this is really powerful. So what I could really do is export, hundreds of scripts and have ARD put together this YAML file to execute these 100 scripts in parallel on Taurus's servers. So with that, you get really, really good involvement into load testing. And again, very, very easy to set up, very easy to export, and really reusable. So really, really a great item for us there. Next on the agenda, improvements to our integrations. So for those who are unfamiliar with these as well, so we have some integrations with some popular tools which handle test case management and requirements management. And the idea with the integrations, firstly, if ARD is generating test cases, we would like to export those test cases back to those pieces of software so they can be, held and executed. The second piece is that ARD can bring information in. So if you have a requirement in Jira, for example, you can then bring that requirement in to start modeling to try and create test cases. And then once your test cases are created, we can export them back and attach them to that same requirement. So this idea of traceability really comes into effect with these integrations. And the new feature we've got for 2.6 is that once ARD exports test cases, it's now smart enough to know where those test cases are. So if you go to export them again, it'll offer to update rather than create new test cases, which is a really, really nice feature actually. So if I, again, jump into another demo for that view, let's just close these screens. Great. And I'm just going to use ALM for this example. So I have an ALM server set up. Just going to type in my login information. Great. I can see my project here, and I can see my folders. That's all perfect. And I'm just going to create a new folder for this. So I'm going to go demo Josh. This is my folder, and I'm just going to export some manual test cases. So I'm going to take these 5 tests here, and I'm going to say send them to HP's ALM, and then I just get asked, okay, where exactly would you like to send them? So I'm going to use that folder I just created, and then as I click that folder, ARD is smart enough to scan that area and then identify, do these test cases already exist? So actually, I don't want all 5 of these test cases. I only want the first 2. So I'm going to uncheck these, and then now I get told that ARD is going to create these first 2 using these green icons, and we're actually going to ignore these last 3. I'm just going to export those to that location. I'm just going to wait for that to finish, and I'll get a little pop-up. So if you're exporting loads of tests, it can just run in the background while you're waiting. And I'm just going to check that. There we go. That's finished. And I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the same 5 test cases, and I'm going to export them again to HP. And I'm just going to export them to the same folder. Oh, wrong folder. There we go. So this time, again, we've done that analysis. We've identified that the first 2 test cases already exist, and the next 3 don't. And that's really quite useful, actually. So one thing I found myself is that I've exported a set of test cases to be run, and I've actually forgotten to include something in my model. So I go back and I make a small change, and now I just want to update those test cases. So rather than going into ALM, deleting all the test cases, and re-uploading them, all I have to do is export them again. And ARD is smart enough to realize that I can update them. And the great thing is we give a bit more flexibility, so you can actually override ARD and say, no, actually, for this second test case, I would like to create it. Please update the first one, but keep them on the same. And this feature actually permutates across.
The system has detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this conference. Do you want to continue your meeting? Press 1 to confirm.
Sorry about that.
If there is no response, the conference will end.
Okay, Melanie. Is that okay now?
Yep, we're good.
Cool. So like I was explaining, this feature actually that I'm demoing with with ALM, we've got the same functionality with our integration with Agile Central and Team Foundation Server. So very, very useful piece of functionality, and very easy to use as well. And ALM for me particularly is quite a difficult piece of software to use. And every time I tend to export items to ALM, I always tend to get some crazy error message. And it's usually because ALM wants it can only have one test case with the same. It can't have two test cases with the same name. So this functionality will at least stop a lot of those kind of errors where instead of creating new ones, we just update existing ones. And if we just bring you back to my presentation as well. The last item, just before I jump for questions actually, is if you have any more questions after this call that you'd like to go into a bit more depth, technical depth, any kind of activity you're trying to complete, the documentation pages for ARD are very, very useful. You can find those at docups.ca.com. Just search for CA Agile Requirements Designer. So there's a lot of information on these pages. They're really, really detailed. And the great thing is there's a feedback area. So if there's something particular we should fill in, that you can add some information there. And something which is always useful is the communities pages. And you can find these at communities.ca.com. Just again, search for CA Agile Requirements Designer. And it's very, very active forum. So you'll find a lot of users there, and you can pick up some tips and tricks. And awesome. On that note, yeah, if I can hand it back to you, Melanie, see if there's any questions.
Sure. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, one option is to put them into the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can enter a text question there, or if you would rather ask a question over the phone, you can do that at this point as well. You can unmute yourself by clicking #6 on your telephone keypad if you'd like to ask a verbal question. Let's just give it a few minutes and see if anyone has any questions. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, as Josh said, you can always check out the documentation or enter a question into the community. We always have experts looking there to answer any questions that come in as quickly as possible. So please feel free to go ahead and enter your questions there. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Thank you, Josh, for a great presentation. We'll be posting the recording along with the slides for today's webcast in the ARD community later today, so please keep an eye out for that. There is a poll up. Please let us know what you thought of today's topic. We like to get your feedback when planning out future sessions. Other than that, thank you everyone so much for joining, and I hope everyone has a great day. I'll see you out in the communities.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.